Hey guys, welcome back to Builds by Maz. In this video, I'll show you how to build a storage rack that can hold 10 of these 27-gallon totes. It also has an upper shelf to allow for some additional storage on top. Let's get started. So the reason for this rack is to give you easy access to everything. If I want to get this pillow on the bottom and all the totes are stacked, I have to remove all the ones on top to get to the bottom tote. So we're going to fix that problem. I'll be using these 27-gallon bins from Home Depot, and here are the dimensions. I like the clear ones because you can actually see what's inside. The rack will be built almost entirely out of 2x4s. I'm designing this for an 8-foot ceiling, so I'm using 7-foot long lumber, which is going to work out perfect. Now in most of these builds I've seen, the bins pull out from their short edge like this, but I don't want everything to extend so far from the wall, so I'm turning everything 90 degrees so the totes pull out from their long edge. The width of these totes measures just over 19 inches, so I'm going to build my rack to be 20 inches wide. I cut a 2x4 to 13 inches. This will go between two of the 2x4x7s, which I didn't cut at all. Since the 2x4s are actually 3.5 inches wide, this will give me a full width of 20 inches. I'm using this paint can as a makeshift stop block. I measured the length to be 13 inches, so that way I can slide my lumber until it just touches the can, and I can quickly make a bunch of repeatable 13-inch cuts. In total, I'll need 6. Using a Craig jig, I drilled 2 pocket holes on either end of each 13-inch piece. If you don't have one of these, I'll have a link down below. They're a great tool to have on hand. I repeated that for all 6 pieces, making sure to drill the holes on both ends. These will go between the top and bottom of these 2x4x7s, giving us long rectangles. I clamped them in place and then used 4 of these 2.5-inch pocket hole screws for each piece. This will make for really solid connections and a strong frame. With the top and bottom screwed in place, I removed the clamps and then set this rectangle against the wall. We'll need to repeat that exact process 2 more times, giving us 3 rectangles. I then gave everything a light sanding just to smooth out the rough edges, as well as to remove any of the lumber stamps. If we flip the tote over, these extended edges are going to be what supports the bin on the rack. Based on the size of the tote, I'm going to leave a gap of 29 1/4 inch between each of the rectangular frames. I used some scrap wood to attach them from the back, making sure the distance was correct. These will be attached with sturdier lumber later, but I wanted to make sure everything would work. But looking back, I probably could have skipped this step and gone straight to the stronger connections. After getting the 2 end pieces connected, I stood up and attached the middle part of the frame, making sure it was 29 1/4 inch from either end. Now I could stand the whole rack up and make sure it was the appropriate width to fit the bins. Next, we can add all the rungs that will hold the bins in place above each other. Remember, the distance from the front to the back of the rack is 20 inches. So I set my stop block and cut out a bunch of 20-inch pieces of 2x4. I then marked where I'm going to place the first rung. The top is going to be 30 1/4 inch off the ground. That's going to give me room to hang a bin and slide one underneath it. I used my speed square to make a straight line all the way across, so I could easily line up this piece and it would be at the same height on both sides. I clamped it in place and then double checked that it was level. Once I confirmed that it looked good, I drilled a pilot hole on either end and attached it with a couple of 2.5-inch wood screws. I did the same thing on this center frame, attaching another piece at the same height. These wood screws are really strong, and using just one on each side is going to give me plenty of holding power. I double checked that everything fit properly, and it was looking great. With this design, the bottom tote doesn't have a rung, so you can just slide it into place. It's a great way to store heavy things without having to do any lifting. Every support piece after the first one will be 16 3/4 inches above the one below it, from top to top. I just repeated the process making sure to keep my measurements exact and the rungs level. This is pretty fast, repeatable work, and you can get all these rungs installed really quickly. Another quick test just to make sure everything's working properly. And again, the bottom bin is for your heavy items, you just slide it into place, and the rest of them you lift up and set on the support rungs. With the left side done, I did the same thing on the right side, but it's the same process, so we can just skip ahead. To beef up the lateral support, I cut some 29 1/4 inch pieces of 2x4 and used pocket holes to connect them along the top and bottom. If I did this again, I would just start with these instead of using the temporary crossbeam supports, which I just removed anyways. I did add a piece of 1x4 to the back, which is how I'm going to attach this rack to the studs in my wall. The whole rack won't be able to be flush with my wall because of the baseboards, so that's why I have this sticking out on the back. To make the top shelf, I cut some 3/4 inch plywood into a 63 by 20 inch rectangle. This fit perfectly over the top of the rack. I attached it with screws drilled in through the top, around the outside, and a couple in the middle. So that marks the end of construction, and with that done, I'll go over all the dimensions one more time. From the top all the way to the bottom, 84 inches. We didn't even cut that piece. Now front to back, the length of all these rungs, 20 inches. These pieces between 29 1/4 inch. That gives us a full width of 63 inches. This piece up top, 63 by 20. From the ground to the top of this, 30 1/4 inch. And then from the top of this to every rung above that is 16 3/4. I used some wood filler to cover up the edge of this piece of plywood to make it look like solid wood. You could also use edge banding here, but I already had this on hand. I also stained the whole rack with this dark walnut stain. You could use any color here, or paint it, or even just leave it bare. It's totally personal preference. I let it dry and then transported it into our storage closet. Once I had it in place, I searched for studs and marked them on the wall. I then attached the rack using two 3-inch wood screws, one on either side of the rack. This is an optional step, but it'll hold the rack in place and prevent any movement at all. Now for the final assembly. Each tote slides into its own place, making this a compact and accessible way to store 10 storage bins. Now, as I mentioned before, these bottom two are great for your heavy items because you can slide them out and get what you need without ever having to actually lift up the tote. As for the rest, you can get to any bin you need without having to remove any others. Plus, having these clear totes lets you find exactly what bin you're looking for. The shelf on the top has been a great extra feature, and we've been storing our suitcases up there. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you can use it as a helpful guide for your own storage rack build. For more home improvement videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.